grand chamber of the Galactic Council was a monument to civilization itself. Crystalline spires rose hundreds of meters into the domed ceiling, each one representing a founding species of the Council. Holographic displays floated between them, streaming data from 10,000 inhabited systems across the galaxy. The air hummed with translation matrices, converting thousands of languages into comprehensible thought packets that every species could understand. It was beautiful. It was ancient. And today, it was the stage for humanity's greatest defiance. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the chamber floor, a small figure dwarfed by the immensity of the space around her. She wore her diplomatic uniform, deep blue with Earth's silver insignia on the shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun. Her hands were clasped behind her back, and her face was calm. But those who knew humans, who had studied their body language and micro-expressions, could see the tension in her jaw, the steel in her eyes. She had been negotiating for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of circular arguments, veiled threats, and condescension that would have broken a lesser diplomat. But Sarah Chen had not broken, and that was precisely why the Council had summoned her here today. High Arbiter Velshan presided over the assembly from his throne of living crystal. He was ancient even by galactic standards, a being of pure silicon-based consciousness housed in a lattice that refracted light into rainbows. He had guided the Council for 12,000 years. He had seen species rise and fall. He had watched the galaxy evolve through ages of expansion and consolidation. And in all that time, no species had ever refused the Council's directives. Until now. Velshan's voice resonated through the chamber, not as sound but as pure meaning transmitted directly into the consciousness of every being present. Ambassador Chen, you have been granted 3 weeks to consider the Council's resource allocation mandate. The terms are generous. Humanity will retain 40% of Sol System's extractable resources. In exchange, you receive our protection, our technology, our guidance as you mature into galactic civilization. This is not a negotiation. This is how the galaxy functions. Do you accept? Sarah took a breath. She had known this moment was coming. She had prepared for it, rehearsed her words 1,000 times during sleepless nights in her quarters. But preparation did not make this easier. She was about to say no to an institution that had governed the galaxy for 200,000 years. High Arbiter, she said, her voice steady and clear. With respect, Earth's answer remains the same. We will not surrender sovereignty over our home system. We are willing, eager even, to establish trade agreements. We will sell resources at fair market rates. We will engage in joint scientific ventures. We will contribute to the galactic community in every way we can. But we will not become tenants in our own home. A ripple of shock went through the chamber. Delegates from 47 species watched in disbelief. The Corthian ambassador, a being of liquid metal, actually fluctuated in agitation. The IS Collective's hive representative made clicking sounds of distress. Even species that privately sympathized with humanity's position remained silent. No one defied the Council, not if they wanted to survive. Velshan's crystalline form pulsed with colors that conveyed deep displeasure. You do not understand what you are refusing. Your species achieved faster-than-light travel merely 53 years ago. You are infants by galactic standards. The Council's mandate exists to prevent young species from depleting their resources before they achieve technological maturity. We have seen it happen countless times. Species that exhaust their home systems before they are ready to expand sustainably. They collapse. They die. We are trying to save you from yourselves. Sarah felt the weight of his words. There was even sincerity in them. Velshan genuinely believed he was acting in humanity's best interest. That made this harder, but it did not change her answer. We appreciate your concern, she said, but humanity has faced extinction before. Ice ages that should have killed us. Plagues that decimated our population. Wars that brought us to the brink of nuclear annihilation. Each time we survived, we learned, we adapted. We didn't reach the stars by being cautious, High Arbiter. We did it by being stubborn, by refusing to accept that anything was impossible. And we will not start accepting limitations now. Velshan's patience, vast as it was, had limits. Then you are fools. The Council's mandate is not a request, it is law. Every species in this chamber has accepted it. The alternative is isolation, sanctions. Your ships will be barred from Council space. Your access to established trade routes will be revoked. You will be alone in the darkness, and when your system's resources run dry, we will not be there to save you. Sarah met his gaze, or what passed for a gaze in a crystalline consciousness. Then I suppose we'll be alone. Earth's answer is no. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted, transmitted, broadcasted their shock and disapproval. Some called for immediate sanctions. Others demanded humanity be expelled from the Council entirely. A few, a very few, remained silent and watched with something that might have been respect. Velshan raised one of his crystalline appendages and silence fell instantly. Ambassador Chen, he said, and there was something cold in his voice now, something that had not been there before. You are hereby charged with obstruction of galactic prosperity under Code Theta-9 of Council law. You will be tried in 48 hours. Until then, you are remanded to custody. Guards. Two massive beings materialized beside Sarah, enforcement constructs built by the architects, a species that existed partially outside normal spacetime. They were impossibly strong, utterly loyal to the Council, and completely without mercy. Sarah did not resist as they placed neural dampeners on her wrists. She had known this was a possibility. Earth had known, but knowing did not make it easier to accept. As they led her from the chamber, she looked back once. The delegates were already moving on to other business. To them, this matter was settled. Humanity would fall in line, as every species eventually did. They always did. They did not know humanity very well. The trial was held 2 days later. It was broadcast across every Council channel, transmitted to every inhabited world within Council space. Billions of beings watched as Sarah Chen stood in the accused's dock, still wearing her diplomatic uniform, still standing straight despite 2 days without sleep in a holding cell designed for silicon-based life forms. The charges were read by Adjudicator, a species that existed only to interpret Council law. Their neural architecture had been optimized over millennia to process legal frameworks with perfect objectivity. They felt no emotion, no bias. They simply recited facts. Ambassador Sarah Chen of the species Homo sapiens, native to the planet designated Earth. You are charged with obstruction of galactic prosperity. The evidence is clear. You refused a direct mandate from the Galactic Council. You encouraged your species to defy established law. You threaten the stability of resource distribution that has maintained galactic peace for 200,000 years. How do you plead? Sarah looked directly at the broadcast cameras. She knew Earth was watching. She knew billions of humans were seeing this. Guilty, she said. I refused. I would refuse again. Earth will not surrender. The adjudicator processed this. There were no mitigating circumstances to consider, no technicalities to explore. She had confessed. The law was clear. Very well. Sentencing will proceed. Velshan descended from his throne to deliver the sentence personally. This was unusual. High arbiters typically remained above such proceedings, but Velshan wanted to make this personal. He wanted Earth to see what defiance cost. Sarah Chen, he said, his voice resonating through every mind in the chamber and across the broadcast. You have committed a crime unprecedented in Council history. You have rejected not just our mandate, but the very foundation of galactic order. For this, there is only one appropriate sentence: erasure. Sarah felt her blood run cold. She had heard of erasure, but only in historical archives. It was the Council's ultimate punishment, used perhaps a dozen times in 200,000 years. The convicted was placed in an escape pod and ejected into a black hole, not just death, complete annihilation. Every atom of your being pulled apart and crushed into infinite density. No body to recover, no grave to visit, just gone. The chamber was silent. Even delegates who had supported harsh punishment looked uncomfortable. This was extreme. Velshan continued. You will be taken to Sagittarius A star, the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy. There you will be released. The Council is not without mercy, Ambassador. You may recant now, accept our terms, beg forgiveness, and you will be spared. Sarah thought of Earth. She thought of the millions of messages of support that had flooded her personal communicator before they took it away. She thought of her daughter, 8 years old, who had asked her before she left why the aliens didn't like them. She thought of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and dreamed. "Tell them," she said quietly, and the broadcast picked up every word, carried them across the galaxy. "Tell Earth I was honored to serve. Tell them not to surrender. And tell them I'll see them soon." Velshan's crystalline form pulsed with something that might have been regret. "Very well. The sentence is confirmed. Execution will be immediate." The architect constructs took her to the execution ship. It was a sleek vessel designed for one purpose, delivering condemned beings to their final destination. The pod they placed her in was small, barely larger than a coffin, with a single viewport. Life support for 12 hours, enough time to reach the event horizon. As they sealed the pod, Sarah closed her eyes. She was not afraid. She had made her choice. Earth had made its choice. And she believed with every fiber of her being that humanity would not let this stand. The pod launched. She felt the acceleration, then the sickening lurch of FTL transition. Through the viewport, she watched stars streak past, then slow as they approached the galactic core. And then she saw it. Sagittarius A star. 4 million times the mass of Earth's sun, compressed into a region smaller than Mercury's orbit. It did not look like much, just a dark circle against the star field, but around it swirled an accretion disk of matter torn from dying stars, glowing with radiation that would have killed her instantly without the pod's shielding. The execution ship released her pod. She felt the momentum carry her forward toward that hungry darkness. The galaxy watched. Earth watched. Velshan himself watched to ensure his sentence was carried out. The pod crossed the event horizon. Time dilated. From Sarah's perspective, only minutes passed. From the outside universe, she simply vanished, her pod's signature disappearing as if it had never existed. Earth's communication channels went silent. The Council waited for Earth's surrender. They gave humanity 30 days to accept new terms even harsher than before. 60% of Sol system resources. Complete demilitarization. Council oversight of Earth's government. It was occupation in all but name. The 30-day deadline came and went. No response from Earth. Then something strange began happening. Every human ship in Council space, every transport, every merchant vessel, every scientific expedition began returning to Sol system. Human diplomats resigned their posts. Human students withdrew from galactic universities. Human workers on orbital stations and asteroid mines packed their belongings and went home. They did not explain. They did not answer questions. They just left. Within 60 days, there were no humans outside Sol system. The galaxy found this unsettling. Species that had worked alongside humans for decades suddenly felt their absence. There was an efficiency to humans, a creative problem-solving ability that other species had come to rely on. Now it was simply gone. The Sol system itself became dark. All communication ceased. Long-range sensors detected nothing beyond the automated warning that greeted any ship that approached. "Come no closer. This is your only warning." The Council debated their response. Some delegates called for immediate military action. The Corthian ambassador argued that humanity was clearly preparing for war and should be crushed before they became a threat. Others urged caution. The IS Collective pointed out that humanity had shown no aggressive intentions. They had simply withdrawn. Velshan was confident. "They are wounded," he told the Council. "They are mourning their ambassador. They will emerge eventually, and when they do, they will have no choice but to accept our terms. We need only wait." So they waited. Months passed. Council intelligence agencies began reporting strange anomalies. Ships that ventured too close to Sol system's outer boundary detected massive energy readings. Power draws that exceeded anything a civilization of Earth size should be capable of producing. Spatial distortions. Gravity fluctuations that defied standard physics. But the data was fragmentary. Something was interfering with long-range scans. It was as if Sol system had been wrapped in a shroud that blocked detailed observation. The Council's scientists could not explain it. 6 months after Sarah Chen's execution, Velshan issued a final ultimatum. "Accept our terms within 48 hours or face military action." The Council fleet will enter Sol system and enforce compliance by force if necessary. Earth's response came 12 hours later. It was brief. Just 7 words transmitted across every council frequency. "We're coming to the council. Wait for us." The galaxy held its breath. The human ships emerged from FTL at the edge of the council's home system without warning. Every sensor array, every military installation, every observation post detected them simultaneously. 12 ships, massive dreadnought-class vessels, each one 5 kilometers long. But they were unlike any ships anyone had seen before. The hulls seemed to bend light around them, creating halos of distorted space-time. The very fabric of reality appeared to warp in their presence, and they moved with an impossible grace, accelerating and decelerating in ways that should have turned any crew inside into paste against the bulkheads. The Council fleet mobilized immediately. 300 warships, representing the combined military might of 47 species, moved to intercept. The human ships did not slow. They simply continued their approach toward the Council's homeworld. Velshan broadcast on all frequencies. "Human vessels, you are in violation of Council space. Turn back immediately or you will be fired upon." The lead human ship, its hull marked with the name Hawking in letters that seemed to shimmer with Hawking radiation itself, responded. "High Arbiter Velshan, we have come to retrieve our ambassador." Velshan's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been pity or mockery. "She is gone, humans. 6 months have passed. She crossed the event horizon of Sagittarius A*. Nothing returns from beyond that boundary. Not matter, not light, not information. This is basic physics. Accept reality and turn back." The human response came from a different ship, one named Schwarzschild. "Then let us show you what humanity learned while you thought us conquered." Space itself began to change. The Council fleet's sensors went haywire. Every ship detected a massive gravitational anomaly forming between them and the human vessels. At first, it was just a distortion, a place where space curved more than it should. Then it grew. A sphere of absolute darkness appeared, perhaps 100 meters across, and around it formed an accretion disk of captured radiation. It was a black hole, a real, stable, controllable black hole, and the humans had created it. Panic spread through the Council fleet. Ships broke formation. Some began powering weapons, others engaged retreat protocols. The laws of physics as the galaxy understood them had just been rewritten. Creating artificial singularities was theoretically possible, but the energy requirements were astronomical, and controlling one, preventing it from evaporating or expanding uncontrollably, should have been impossible. The Hawking broadcast again. "For 6 months, every human scientist, every engineer, every physicist on Earth and our colonies has worked toward one goal. We took every theory we had about black holes and pushed them past their breaking point. We built Hawking Penrose drives. We learned to create, stabilize, move, and dismiss singularities. We did what you said was impossible because we had no other choice." The artificial black hole moved. It danced between the human ships like a trained pet, responding to their commands with precision. It spiraled closer to the Council fleet, close enough that sensors detected the gravitational pull, close enough that ships had to adjust their positions to avoid being drawn in. Then it simply vanished, dismissed as easily as it had been created. The Council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other. The military commanders demanded explanations from their scientists. The scientists had no explanations to give. 300 warships sat paralyzed, their weapons useless against an enemy that could create black holes at will. Velshan, for the first time in 12,000 years, did not know what to say. The human ship named Hawking broke formation and accelerated away from the fleet, toward the galactic core. The other ships remained, maintaining their position. On the Hawking's bridge, a crew of 50 humans monitored systems that their species had not even theorized 6 months ago. At the command station sat Admiral Marcus Webb, formerly of Earth's Orbital Defense Force, now commander of humanity's first singularity-capable warship. "Open a channel to Earth," he said quietly. "Tell them we're proceeding with retrieval." The ship jumped to FTL, but not in the way other species understood it. The Hawking Penrose drive did not create a warp bubble or fold space. It manipulated gravity itself, creating a controlled cascade of spacetime curvature that allowed the ship to fall through the universe at speeds that made traditional FTL look like a leisurely stroll. 16 hours later, the Hawking emerged near Sagittarius A star. The supermassive black hole dominated the viewscreen, a monster of gravity surrounded by the tortured remains of stars that had ventured too close. The crew felt the weight of it, even through all their shielding and countermeasures. This was not a force humanity was meant to challenge, but they would challenge it anyway. Lieutenant Sarah Park, the ship's quantum entanglement specialist, monitored her displays with fierce concentration. Before Ambassador Chen had left for the Council, Earth scientists had injected her pod with quantum-entangled particles, paired with identical particles in a laboratory on Earth. It had been a precaution, a desperate hope that somehow, someway, they might be able to track her if the worst happened. Now that precaution was their lifeline. "I have the entanglement signature," Park reported. "She's there, right at the event horizon." Time dilation means, from her perspective, only about 6 hours have passed. Webb nodded. He had known the physics, but hearing it confirmed still sent a chill through him. Sarah Chen was still alive in there, from her own point of view barely into her journey toward oblivion, while the outside universe had aged 6 months. "Engage the Penrose Protocol," he ordered. The Hawking's drives activated in a configuration that had been tested exactly once, in simulation. The ship generated not one, but dozens of micro-singularities, each one precisely calibrated and positioned. Together, they created a spacetime corridor, a tunnel that reached backward along the exact path Sarah's pod had taken. It was not time travel, not exactly. It was more like creating a momentary reversal of causality within a strictly defined region of spacetime. The galaxy watched. Every sensor that could detect events at the galactic core was focused on this moment. What the humans were attempting should have been impossible. Every law of physics said that information, once it crossed an event horizon, could never escape. Stephen Hawking had proven that black holes could evaporate through quantum effects, but that took trillions of years and left nothing behind but random radiation. But humans had found a loophole. Or rather, they had forced one into existence through sheer determination and scientific brilliance born of desperation. The Hawking's drive strained. Power levels exceeded safety margins. The ship's hull groaned under forces it was never designed to withstand. On Earth, every power plant, every fusion reactor, every solar collector was tied into a quantum relay, feeding energy across 26,000 light-years of space to support this one impossible moment. And then, emerging from the darkness at the edge of Sagittarius A star's event horizon, a small escape pod appeared. It reversed its trajectory, pulled backward by forces that violated everything the galaxy thought it knew. The pod accelerated toward the Hawking, crossing the distance in seconds. The ship's docking clamp seized it, pulled it inside, sealed the bay. Lieutenant Park's hands were shaking as she confirmed life signs. "She's alive. Vital signs stable. Slight temporal disorientation, but nothing dangerous." Webb allowed himself to breathe for the first time in hours. Opened the pod. In the council chamber, every being watched the broadcast in absolute silence. They saw the pod open. They saw Sarah Chen step out, wearing the same uniform she had worn 6 months ago, looking only slightly disheveled, as if she had just woken from an uncomfortable nap rather than spent hours falling toward oblivion. She looked directly at the camera. Her first words were, "I told you I'd see you soon." The Hawking returned to the Council's home system. The fleet had not moved. They could not move. What could weapons do against a species that could reach into black holes and pull out the dead? Sarah Chen broadcast from the Hawking's bridge, standing beside Admiral Webb. Behind her, the other 11 human ships had formed up, a wall of impossible technology and human determination. "We're done negotiating," she said, and her voice was hard as diamond. "Here are our terms. Complete sovereignty over Sol's system. No restrictions. No oversight. No mandates. Full equal status in the Galactic Council with veto power over any measure that affects humanity. A formal apology, broadcast to every world in Council space, for my attempted murder. Reparations to be determined by an independent arbiter. An immediate review of all Council mandates imposed on younger species in the last 10,000 years. Velshun found his voice. You cannot dictate terms to the Council. We are the law of this galaxy. We have maintained order for 200,000 years. Sarah's expression did not change. You maintained order because no one could challenge you. That ended 6 months ago. Let me be clear about what humanity has achieved. We can create black holes anywhere. We can move them anywhere. We can make them any size we want. We don't want war, High Arbiter. We never did, but we will never be subjects again. To emphasize her point, she nodded to Admiral Webb. The ship named Schwarzschild moved away from the formation, jumping to a nearby uninhabited system. The Council's sensors tracked it. They watched as it created another artificial singularity, this one larger than before, perhaps 500 meters across. The ship positioned it near a dead planet, a lifeless rock that had orbited its star for billions of years. The black hole consumed the planet in 17 minutes. The entire world, pulled apart atom by atom, crushed into infinite density, ceased to exist. When the singularity was dismissed, there was nothing left but debris. The message could not have been clearer. The Council went into emergency session. For 48 hours, delegates debated, argued, and calculated. The mathematics were inescapable. A single ship with singularity technology could destroy entire fleets, could devastate planets, could destabilize stars. There was no defense against a black hole, no armor thick enough, no shield strong enough. A civilization with this technology could not be fought. It could only be respected or destroyed utterly. And destroying humanity would require getting close enough to use weapons, which meant getting within range of their black hole generators. It was the perfect deterrent. Velshan argued for war anyway. He had dedicated 12,000 years to maintaining Council authority. He could not accept this challenge to the order he had built. But the other delegates refused. The Corthian ambassador, who had called for harsh punishment just months ago, now voted for acceptance. The IS collective calculated survival probabilities and concluded that cooperation was the only rational choice. Species after species voted to accept humanity's terms. In the end, only 3 delegates voted against. Velshan was one of them. It did not matter. The motion carried. Velshan resigned that day, the first High Arbiter to fail in 50,000 years. He retreated to his homeworld, his crystalline form dimmed with something that might have been shame or simple exhaustion. The formal ceremony took place 1 week later. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council looked the same, but everything had changed. Sarah Chen walked across that same floor where she had been condemned, but now she wore not just her ambassador's uniform but the sigil of a full counselor. Earth had been granted a seat at the table, an equal voice in galactic affairs. The apology was read by the new High Arbiter, a being named Shenkura from a species known for diplomatic wisdom. On behalf of the Galactic Council, we acknowledge our error. We attempted to impose our will on a sovereign species. We disregarded their right to self-determination. We executed their representative for the crime of defending her people. For these actions, we offer formal apology and assurance that such injustice will not occur again. It was enough. Humanity had not come seeking revenge. They had come seeking respect. Over the following months, the galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Younger species, emboldened by humanity's example, began questioning mandates they had accepted without protest. The Council, now chastened, found itself actually negotiating instead of dictating. Change came slowly, but it came. Humanity began sharing their singularity technology, not freely but carefully, with species that had proven themselves trustworthy, with those who respected sovereignty and self-determination. The technology spread, and with it came a new balance of power. No single species could dominate anymore. No council could impose its will through threat of force. It was, perhaps, the beginning of a more genuine galactic civilization. Sarah Chen stood in the council chamber once more, 6 months after her rescue. She was participating in her first vote as a full counselor. The matter at hand was a trade agreement with a young species that had just achieved FTL travel. The proposed terms were fair, genuinely fair, negotiated rather than imposed. Sarah voted yes. So did 44 other counselors. The motion passed. After the session, a delegate from the IS collective approached her. "You changed the galaxy, Ambassador Chen, or should I say Counselor Chen now. Sarah smiled slightly. We didn't change it. We just reminded it of something important, that every species has the right to say no, even to those who think they know better. The is made a clicking sound that conveyed agreement. What will humanity do now that you have your deterrent? Your seat at the council. Sarah looked up at the crystalline spires representing the founding species of the council. We're going to do what we've always done. Explore, learn, build. We have helium-3 to extract from Jupiter, rare Earth asteroids to mine, a whole solar system to develop. And now we'll do it on our own terms as partners with the galaxy rather than subjects of it. She paused, then added, and if anyone ever threatens us again, we'll remind them why threatening humanity is a poor survival strategy. The IS delegate made a sound that might have been laughter. I suspect no one will need reminding. The lesson has been thoroughly taught. That evening, Sarah returned to her quarters on the diplomatic station. She had a message waiting, transmitted from Earth. It was a video from her daughter, now 9 years old, smiling at the camera. "Mom, I saw you on the news. They said you made history, that you saved humanity. Is that true?" Sarah smiled, her eyes suddenly wet. She recorded a reply, "I didn't save humanity, sweetheart. I just refused to let anyone take away what we'd earned. And when they tried to make me disappear, your planet spent 6 months doing the impossible to bring me back. That's what saved humanity. We save each other. We always have." She sent the message and looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was turning. Billions of humans were living their lives, free to chart their own course among the stars. It had cost so much to get here. It would cost more to maintain it, but it was worth it. It would always be worth it. In the depths of space, the human ships with their impossible drives continued their patrol. The Hawking, the Einstein, the Schwarzschild, the Penrose, monuments to human determination and scientific achievement, reminders to the galaxy that humanity would never kneel. And in the galactic core, Sagittarius A star continued its eternal rotation, unaware that it had become part of humanity's legend, the black hole that could not hold them, the event horizon they had crossed and returned from. The galaxy had tried to make Sarah Chen a lesson. Instead, she had taught the galaxy one: never underestimate a species that looks at the impossible and sees only a challenge waiting to be overcome. That was humanity's true strength, not their technology, not their ships, but their absolute refusal to accept that anything was beyond their reach. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had split the atom and walked on their moon and reached the stars. And when the galaxy tried to take their freedom, they had bent physics itself rather than surrender. That was the story that spread through the galaxy in the years that followed. Not the technical details of Hawking-Penrose drives or quantum entanglement or spacetime manipulation, but the simple truth that humanity, when pushed to the edge, had looked into the abyss and pulled their ambassador back out. Species across the galaxy heard that story, and they understood what it meant. Humanity was here to stay, on their own terms, as equals, forever.